This is the Utah state flower. It's called the sago lily, a lily of the desert. These ones just grow out here, and the purple one is very rare. Recently, Chief and I went to the next town, chasing ruins. First we went to this power plant here. I've told you I've always wanted to check it out, but apparently it's still live. Once I got close to the equipment, I could both hear and feel the buzzing. I don't know why I thought it was abandoned, but a lot of cool things to check out. Some of the most interesting walls or formations I've seen. But there was plenty to check out, so we moved on. I found myself in the town of Price, and we got some food and sat on Main Street, abandoned Main Street. Very beautiful and unappreciated. Here we can see that one large building has been turned into two, and this feature was really beautiful. I just love this ornamentation. Ironic that it was by a Home Accents shop full of junk. But anyway, I started chasing these block walls before long, crossing bridges and going through tunnels. And though I love this classic brick architecture of the old world, I'm extra fascinated with these blocks that I find scattered all throughout Utah, in the middle of nowhere. And today we're gonna go to the middle of nowhere. It's one thing to find them in town, and even in town, a massive block wall could be seen from the highway. And I ran up here, tried to get close to it, but as you can see, it's pretty much in people's backyard. And I got so bold as to knock on someone's door. I wanted permission to go up here. And they weren't there, but I turned around and there was a man sitting on his patio across the street. Turns out the house I was knocking on was his house, a rental. And as it also turned out, he was the mayor of this town for 16 years. His family had worked in the mines. He was of Italian origin, a really cool guy. And here I was so excited to see these walls in his backyard, and he pointed me to a gold mine. As far as this research is concerned, it wasn't actually a gold mine, but it was a whole town of these blocks, abandoned, way up in the mountains. So I'm going to share that with you today. I was very excited, but it was getting late. I went home, got some rest, and the next morning explored this town. Thanks for being here today. I love you all. God bless, and welcome. I think I'll just use this opportunity to intro. Again, how would we know if ruins were ruins? And first let me just define ruins for me in America. Some old ruins, I'm gonna say, are pre-Columbian. That's what we're gonna call ruins. And so how, again, would we know if they were ruins? And in my opinion, it's twofold. A, there will be no story or history or his story. None. If there's no story and you find something out in the middle of the desert, then we're dealing with ruins. Again, pre-Columbian. Perhaps not that ancient. Ancient, perhaps being over 1,000 years. I don't know. We all must agree on definitions, and I'm not about to make definitions, just explain my position. So A, no history. B, a stupid history or narrative or story. If there's no story, or if the story is just stupid, then we must be dealing with ruins. And of course there's more. There could be C, if we can't replicate it today. And even this is a two-parter. If we can't replicate it using the means that they had in the 1850s, and most certainly if we can't replicate it today using modern machinery, then they are also ruins. Everything else is just talk. People will gaslight us and say, oh yes, they were hard workers. But in the case of no history, who are they? Who are you even talking about? So let me share this journey. Already in a removed and remote small town, I drive another hour into the mountains. I had the luxury of a semi-improved road, but again a luxury that would not have been available in the 1850s. But at a certain point, I reached this construction operation. My destination was this canyon. There is a beautiful, massive building up here. There's pictures of it on Google Maps. But the man told me it's private property, and that would be the theme of this journey. But here you can see what they're doing. Talk about roads. Here's what it takes to make a road. Everything that you see here, plus more, plus the heavy dump trucks that were driving up and down. And here we see a track hoe and a grader, which makes everything flat. A roller, which really makes everything flat, but you need to grade it first. The equipment to move the equipment, as we see here. You can't just drive these things out on location. You need to get them here. They're not meant for the highway or the 1850s way, which was much worse than this. A couple miles up, it really starts to get good. Even though there were ruins the whole way, from the town up to that man, it's just that the ruins got more intense the further up the canyon I got, which made no sense. Which doesn't make sense. And this whole area appears to have been a massive city. Okay, and now we have a story, or a legend. Standardville, Utah, the standard for coal mining towns, or camps. Not even a town, a camp. About 5 miles northwest of Helper on Spring Canyon Road is the old mining camp of Standardville, Utah. There was a log house at this location as early as 1890. Who cares about a log house when you see these ruins? Getting its start in 1912, the mine and settlement were developed by the Standard Coal Company. The Standard Coal Company had extensive financial resources because most of the town and the mine construction occurred within the first year. So not the buildings, but the whole town. The railroad companies, Denver and Rio Grande, extended the rails to Standardville. Improvements and additional facilities were added through the 1910s, and by 1914 the town, tipple, and mine facilities were completed. Standardville was a model company town that was so well planned that it was intended to be the standard for other mining camps. So was it a town or was it a camp? In 1914, the company shipped coal. A year later, the output increased 5-fold. By 1915, there was 143 men in the workforce. 143. The town boasted, now it's a town, a large store, steam-heated apartments, so this is some camp, a butcher shop, barber shop, a hospital, recreational hall, tennis courts. Okay, now the miners need tennis courts at their camp, and an elementary school with 4 teachers and 200 students. Here we can see what she looks like. But all was not perfect. There were many strikes, and in 1922, a mine guard was killed. When the Utah governor learned of the shooting, he sent in the National Guard troops. The town of Standardville, this is described by a state coal mine inspector in 1923. So here comes a state coal mine inspector, and he's just shocked with what he sees. Here's his description. The town of Standardville is a model mining town. A modern sewer system has been installed throughout the town. Lawns and trees have been planted. All houses are well built, and many are modern in every respect. An apartment house equipped with electric ranges was built last year. Also a hotel, a modern hospital, an amusement hall of steel and hollow tile construction, where the best motion pictures are shown regularly. The company maintained its workforce of 350 men through the 20s. And in 1927, the Standard Coal Company boasted that Standardville had completed waterworks systems, electric lights, steam heat, stores, markets, ice factories, refrigeration, a confectionery store, soda fountain, theaters, playgrounds, and schools. The company pamphlet, which I would love to see, showed photographs of the main street lined with 1.5 to 2-story homes set on concrete foundations with gable and hipped roofs. Many were constructed with tile and covered with stucco. Everything was going great until 1930 and disaster struck. Gas explosion killed some people. 17 men died, but they continued. They continued until 1939, and the company could not meet its payroll. Yeah, probably because they built all these stone buildings. Sorry. Even though they couldn't meet their payroll, the 265 miners voted to work only for food to save the mine from closing. So noble. But the mine was closed nonetheless. In 1939, the company was sold under foreclosure. The buildings were moved to the neighboring town of Helper. However, the mine office remained open. 2 families continued to live in the town until the 70s. This is a legend, mind you. Until then, most of the buildings in Standardville were in good condition. Finally, the buildings were sold to the public. Why didn't they just build new ones if they were so crafty? No, they sold them and moved them to Helper and Price. Many of the stone and tile buildings were torn down, but others still stand. The roofs were gutted for lumber. The mine portals were dynamited or caved in. Come on. And today it's in ruins. That's it. As usual, it seems like there's many stages, but I was very excited because not only were there block walls everywhere, block canals, bridges, railroad tunnels going through mountains made of this material, but there were buildings, some fully intact, of course no windows, and then there was this wall, and this wall ran for over a mile that I chased it, and we also began to see brick buildings emerging everywhere. These walls and brick buildings in places with no roads. There's no road here. There's no way to get up here. And things really started to take a turn at this point. This wall was almost scary, how massive and out of place it was. Coupled with the brick buildings on the inside of the wall, I did learn of this town from the mayor, or former mayor, and it was a mining town, according to history. So we can check that off of the box. Check. We do have history. Is it a good history? I don't know. And all I can really do is look at the probability of all of this block work being built up here in the mountains. Again, Utah doesn't even become a state until late in the game. One of the last states. And yet there's a city made of megalithic blocks and bricks and concrete and everything else. So what is this thing? Again, it looked like there were structures on Google Maps, and now it's just filled in. Here we can see the block wall. And here when I pan over, everywhere I look, I see blocks. Everywhere, on both sides of the mountain. Once my eyes became trained to see it, they were everywhere. Here is a wall. Here is one above it. Here are some brickwork, and I've never seen bricks like this. Blocks, brick blocks. And the whole city has been overgrown, covered up, buried in some cases, and I think induced. And though I love the sage and nature, I wish it was all gone, at least around these ruins. Here we see an arch buried. It's something I didn't notice when I was there. In some areas I couldn't even get to. And ask yourself, how did people ever get up here. And here a lot of these stones show signs of being cast. And when talking to the mayor, he was, of course, under the impression, as we're taught by history, that these are all carved blocks, including the blocks in his backyard. And when I discussed it with him and shared my perspective gently, you could tell it made sense to him, that it made no sense. But I could also tell that I'd probably said enough. Here we can see bricks. Just this landscape is made of bricks and blocks. Some of them having a span wider than the width of my hands extended. And what of the bricks? The brick structures were some of the most interesting and some of the most impossible to get to. No level grading around them. How did somebody ever build them? There's no reason why they should be in this condition unless they had been bombed out, purposely destroyed. The quality was superb, and it leads me to believe that this area was much more orderly, these ruins in better condition, before modern man stumbled upon them. Even the mayor told me that people take the blocks, and even he had used them to rebuild some of his wall, ruins, to repair it. And what I could see was massive, beautiful trees by all these homes that had been planted at one point. Some beautiful cherry blossom trees, just totally out of place, that were planted in good times. Within 200 years. This place was a heart pounder, feeling like I was in an absolute ghost town, which I was. I wish I could have spoken to the people. I wish I had more history, and everything around me was just saying no trespassing, keep out. Here is a cherry tree, full beautiful blossoms. And everywhere I went, I found more ruins all around this cherry tree. Then I was driving on what seems like an ordinary road, as you can see up here. But then I jumped out of the car, and here's what I get under here. Here is what I get. Are you telling me that somebody carved like this, all zigzaggy? And let me show you what it looks like under this bridge. The stones get even larger down here, as you would want them to be if you're gonna have a crossing. Here we see pipage coming out. Looks like conduit within pipage. And this blockwork, some of these being really long. Why would you carve something so big that you couldn't move? No. But here we do see softness. We do see what seems to be poured. And there are different stages. We can see that somebody has made repairs, or tried to, with a mortar that seems to have been applied on the outside, not necessarily original. But I don't know. Baffling. Baffling as anything Peruvian, in my opinion. Here, look at the tiny little stones. Were these really tiny little stones used? And then they carved the giant one out to accommodate for the tiny little stones? No. Stupid. And you can see it just disappears. I mean, at one point there was no rubble and there was no brush on any of this. This is just an entire city as far as the eye can see. And I'm sorry, but yes, we do have history. Mining. An old mining town. That doesn't suffice, in my opinion. This is not the handiwork of miners, nor is it the care or necessity or need of miners. Whatever you're mining, you're not building a town. You're not building something that's going to last 1,000 years, which is what we see here. This is fine quality, unexplained. Here the mayor was saying they were cutting these, but I don't think so. This doesn't look cut. And here we can see me by this one block. I just wanted to show some perspective of the size. And the stuff under the bridge and the stuff that is buried is in much better condition than the stuff on the surface. But it's absolutely everywhere. And as we speak, somebody is putting up fencing and no trespassing signs on both sides of the road. Very disheartening. I think that that's another indicator for ruins. If they're so unknown that they're not even being protected and private property is just taking them over. Here a little home site, and you can see the massive trees, just giant. These willows, I think they were. And here you can see how far up on the mountainside these are. And as I've always said on this channel from day one, roads are older than you think. And here we have the ruins of this town and roads zigzagging up and down the mountain. And here you can see the zigzagging. And there's ruins down in the canyon. There's ruins way up here as I'll zoom in and try to show you. And the roads are not roads. They're just overgrown. But clearly they were. And I'm glad there was all the heavy equipment when I started this video to show you what it takes to build a road. That was just some of the absolute necessities it would take to zigzag up a mountain like this. Here, a small stone ruin with a stone roof. That's what I love. And I wanted to get up close to these stone roofs because it's very rare that we get to see the roof intact. A monolithic slab. Nobody cut that. It reminds me of Obama.
You didn't build that.
No, you're right. And here you could see what was preventing me from exploring the roof. Surely there's some kind of Antiquities Act or something. There's some old ruin at the top of this road that I saw on Google Earth. I didn't even drive that far. It's so far up there. It might have taken me another 45 minutes to get up there. And it was called the Leasing Office. It shows pictures of that one too. So beautiful, so ornamental, and so far away. Here you can see the blockage. Look at the beautiful fitting and the, at one point, soft condition that it must have been in. So look how old these trees are. And these blocks are buried under the trees like a little retaining wall. And I didn't need any more brick evidence. I mean, it was everywhere. Here, the bricks, in this site at least, that I was looking at, were some very interesting bricks. First of all, they were huge. You can see, compared to my hand, at least an inch wider than a typical brick. And the inner making of the brick was one I rarely see. You can see these shiny bits of black and red and white. What kind of brick is this? Almost looking like a banana bread or something. Here again, we can see brick, newer, really old, super old brick in here, infused with this blockage. Here again, brick and block, brick and block. Here we can see metal. Looks a little cooked, or it could have been leaching metal out. I don't know. Carved, and then you're gonna stick metal in your carving somehow. Here again, coming out of a different material. Here, this really looks like a blend, a geopolymer or concrete blend of some sort. Beautiful composition, that is. And here's just a little map from Google Earth. You can see the little town here of Helper, which is already so far away. And then Castlegate, another town of Royal. Is this not ringing bells? And here's where I was. And here's where I was trying to get to. Here is the leasing office up here. Ruins up here. Way up in these wrinkled mountains, or whatever they are, full of blocks. Here again, really difficult to get to. Way up here, and you could see that it's all wall. So here again, you can see I'm zooming into walls that I see through the brush. There's some up here, there's some down here. And we could even see drainage popping out at some points, as if this blockage had been formed to accommodate for drainage. And this was really interesting. It looked like a clay pot or something, and perhaps it was a pipe that's just melted out. I'm not sure. And here I pan over and we see this stone structure, some back there, up here as well. We see the massive stone wall, more stone buildings. I mean, come on. They could almost say these were Native American ruins, but they're too advanced. Look at this. This step wall that continues up like a pyramid. But even what we would be told are ruins in other countries, I think have been dumbed down. Because here what we can see is beautiful structures around them. Like this one, for example. This one was the one that was most difficult to reach. Hence why I think it's so preserved. It's like everything that was close to the road had been trashed. And like I said, the further you went, the more you would see something like this. Come on, look at this. You know this architecture, even from the bones. And they really were just bones. That was the front. And here's the back part. And this thing is huge, actually. It looked tiny, and the closer I got, the more gigantic I realized this structure was. There's nothing primitive about this, but yet fitting into the category of ruins as far as we're concerned. And I've never seen bricks like this again. And the ruins continue. There's some up here, there's a wall up here, and just past this boulder, the road washed out completely. So I think I'm gonna leave it there. I think that was a lot to share in one of my episodes. I look forward to digging into this and getting as much of the mainstream history that I can. Thanks for watching. I love you all. God bless. And I'll see you next week.